So what I'm going to talk about quickly here today is planning for success. Things we need to think about and consider before we rush out to buy document management software and assume that's going to fix all of our problems. We see that quite often where people look at document management as strictly a software-based project. To them, it's the same as upgrading from Lotus to Microsoft Exchange. But there's a lot of forethought that you need to put into these types of systems before we move forward. So the 8 things that we're going to explore in more detail is obtaining executive level support on the project, building a strong company case to justify this type of investment, set it but not forget it, so we're going to talk about the ongoing maintenance and planning for that, to scan or not to scan our back files, having the right people on the bus or part of this committee that's going to select a document management solution. Rome wasn't built in a day. Let's not rush this. Let's not look at it as being strictly let's buy a box of software and have us up and running at the end of the week. We want to obtain input from all the different levels of the organization, and we want to partner for success. So before we hop into those 8 items in more detail, I'll just throw up a couple numbers here and elaborate a little bit more on why organizations are looking towards document management these days. 40%, that's the percent of time that the average employee spends looking for information to do their job functions. So almost half their day is spent looking for the information, retrieving it out of filing cabinets, looking for misfiled documents, just so that they can perform their job functions. 19 times is the average time that a document is copied or photocopied in its life cycle. 7.5% is the number of documents that are lost each year. 3% are the number of documents that are misfiled, and 90% of business activities still revolve around a paper process. It doesn't take a big stretch of the imagination to understand why we want to look at more effective and improved business resource solutions. So let's hop into the 8 reasons in a little bit more detail. First one is obtaining executive level support of the project. Document management or records management solutions like this really change your business process, as Michael alluded to earlier. They're really going to affect the ways you work. It's not just scan our archive and getting rid of the paper. It's implementing workflows and business process automation to improve business. To be able to break the mentality of business as usual, you need support from the top. If you're sitting in the middle and trying to push this issue down and up at the same time, you're going to run into a lot of headaches and a lot of problems. You need support from somebody who has a concept of what the big picture is in mind. Somebody who understands where the company wants to be down the road, what our business goals are, how we're going to achieve them, and how this type of solution is going to play into that. And you really need to highlight what document management can do for the company. It's not a matter of going up to the CEO and saying, we want to spend X on software. Here's what our return is going to be. So it's building that business case, which leads us into number 2. It's more than just time savings. A lot of people will look at document management projects and they'll see that 40% number and they'll say, we'll be able to save time there. We won't be going to these filing cabinets so often. We won't be printing as much. We won't be looking for lost documents. But it goes a lot farther than that. Knowledge transfer to new employees is a great example of this. And what we mean by that is that if you have a new hire, and you have to bring them up on speed on all your policies, all your procedures, where documentation is stored, or in case of an emergency, where do we access information. If we can shorten that training time, and that time that we're investing into them, they're going to be an effective worker much faster. Another idea is creating a company differentiator. In today's world, none of us want to sell on price. We don't want to make next to nothing, but we want to make it a good business case for clients that want to deal with us. And to do that, we want to really improve on our customer service. So if we imagine a typical paper-based filing system, and as Mike was talking about in the first presentation, the pension company was a good example, where it would take them a couple of days potentially to respond to a client's request. With a proper document management system, while you're on the phone with them, you can pull up the image on your screen, you can email it to them, you can share the information, or if they have access to remote in, they can even get it themselves. That's huge compared to saying, oh, I'll get back to you in 2 to 3 days. We want to mitigate our business risks. We want to, if there was a fire in the organization and it was all stored in paper and that was the only copy we had, well, we've lost everything. What's our business continuity plan at this point? If it's all stored electronically and is backed up off-site, we have a natural disaster or a building collapse or anything that goes wrong, we can still be up and running in a reasonable amount of time. And we also want to enhance the security. Right now in a paper-based environment, if somebody takes a file out of the file room, there's no audit, there's no accountability on what are they doing with that record. Are they sharing it with competitors? Did they lose a page out of there? Do they even have access, or should they be allowed to look at that file? With a proper document management system, one of the key benefits is being able to restrict access to documentation that employees need to do their job function and what they can do with those documents. So, hey, we only want you to look at it, great. You have full access to print, email, share, annotate, whatever you need to do on top of that. Set it, but don't forget it. And this is one thing that we always talk about, is that document management is going to save you a lot, that we saw in those last couple slides. There's a lot of really good business practices and reasons to go into this, but it's not free. It's not something that we just download a free shareware copy of off the internet, and again, by the end of the week, we're up and running. We want to take into consideration what's our storage space requirements going to be on the servers, what's our backup procedures going to be, what about hardware maintenance? So Mark was talking about all these scanners. Well, how often are we going to have to maintain these scanners? How often are we going to need to replace them? This is all part of the planning project so that we can see our costs long term. As well, data migration. We talked about it earlier. Is the file format that I'm scanning into today going to be viewable 5 years from now? Is the software technology that I'm using today going to be available 10 years from now? Is the storage media of choice going to be readable 5 years from now? Those are all things that we want to look at, and every year have a migration plan in place to see, do we need to move systems from one version to another? Do we need to change image formats? Do we need to change scanning hardware or optical media? To scan or not to scan, this is in regards to your back file collections, your large storage rooms, high volume areas, paper. And it's probably one of the questions we get asked a lot. And it varies from application to application. If we have 2 or 3 people whose job it is dedicated to pulling out information, furnishing it to people who need it, and like, for instance, a law firm or a medical practice, well then maybe there is an application there. If we can save labor costs on those people or reassign them to different tasks, maybe there's an application there to scan the back file. There's a justification for it. If we're putting in document management to improve business processes and our archival records, we very rarely look at, maybe 2 or 3 times a week, the chances are you probably want to start from a day forward. Say everything from May 21st, 2010 is in document management system. Everything prior to that is paper-based. We're going to take advantage of those business process automation solutions as opposed to getting all our archival paper in there. Some people will actually take the middle ground, and they'll look at it in the accounts payable application, for instance, and they'll say, okay, well, we need to retain these documents for 7 years. And well, by the time we get everything in place and up and running, year 7 is probably ready to be destroyed. Year 6 is too far behind it, and 80% of our retrievals are within the last 2 years. So sometimes they'll take that middle ground as well. Having the right people on the bus, how to pick the right committee and the right selection of individuals to be in there to evaluate different software selections and what you're going to need and make this plan out. Really want people at management level with a clear understanding of what the business goals are. People who are going to understand what the staffing needs are going to be, what the training requirements are going to be, what the overall business impact. People who see the big picture of their department as well as the whole company. Question we get asked a lot is, what's IT's involvement in this project? Should they lead it? Should they just be brought in to consult? IT does need to be involved, and depending on who you're looking at from the IT department, they could either lead it or they could just be one of the committee members as well. It really depends on how they function within the organization. Do they see big picture ideas? But obviously IT is going to play a huge role. They're going to have to maintain the system. They're going to have to monitor the backups. They're going to have to support it, do user training, things like that on an ongoing basis. So it's good to have IT involved to make sure that it's going to work with your business systems. Rome wasn't built in a day. It does take time. I have had the phone call that actually says, can I buy something and can I be doing document management 2 weeks from now? And they want a price. And we have to take a step back and we have to start looking at everything we've been talking about already in the slides. We've got to plan this out. Taking the time to plan ahead of time is going to ensure success going down the road. If we just try to put the software in place and work around it, we're really going to struggle. We need to look at what our document processes are, what our indexing schemes are, how the documents are going to be classified and interfiled and interlinked. Doesn't mean that this whole process has to take a year or two. It could take, depending on the size of the application, it could take a month or two. But it really does need to have proper planning done ahead of time. Obtain the input from all individuals involved. They're all different levels. Right from the very top of the food chain down to the document users and document owners. You'll be surprised what insight you get once you talk to people who are actually working with the documents every day and using the processes. You start to find out that things have changed slightly since you remember rolling out a certain document type, or a process has a new step in it now, because you're more of an overview of the application or the department. So you know what accounting's function is. You don't necessarily know how they do each and every job within that function. Another great reason to get input from all levels is that you're going to help ease operator acceptance of the rollout. And this one's key. Operator acceptance, if the end users don't want to use the system, they're going to find every way to work around it. And that's going to cause you more headaches than it's worth. So getting them involved early, helping them understand why we're changing to a new system, really helps them with that change management down the road. And partnering for success. There's actually one of our blog posts in the handouts there as well that goes into this in more detail. But when you're looking for partnering with a document management vendor or someone who's going to sell you the software as a part of this or help you with all this planning phase, we really want to look for somebody who understands the document or records management industry. And that seems like a no-brainer, but we see a lot of people entering into this space now who used to be involved in accounting systems, enterprise resource planning systems, CRM software, who understand that document management is a huge growing industry and they just want to get their piece of the pie. The problem there is they don't understand the implications of putting in a system like this. They don't necessarily understand the scanners that are going to be required or legality issues behind the documents that you're going to convert. So it's good to find somebody who has that experience, has past successes, and is willing to take the time to really understand your business. Again, software is just a tool of the whole solution. It's that planning phase and the proper rollout.